So, gentlemen, thanks for joining us today on Leadership Log, which is a podcast for the Air Force Lifecycle Management Center community on topics of interest. And the topic of interest today is the solution that you all developed for the Microsoft Files block that was recently announced and ran through. And so you're going to help us understand what that was and why it's important the way it was recovered. But before we do, let's meet both of you, sir. If you could introduce yourself and give us a little bit of your career background.
Sure. My name is Lieutenant Colonel Emilio Talipan. I'm an acquisition officer by trade. Largely done that for the last 17 years, with the exception of about 3 years where I was in recruiting service as a flight commander. This is my second time being stationed at Wright-Patt, and I'm a 2004 graduate of Penn State, which kind of makes it difficult being stationed at Wright-Patt a little bit because we're in Buckeye country here.
That's right. And Tyler?
Yeah, I'm Tyler Cronenberry. I've been working on DEAMS, the DEAMS program for 3 years at this point. I was previously on DEAMS for a few years, starting in 2010. I work on the operations team, focusing on performance, and I've been a network engineer for most of my career.
Okay. All right. So you mentioned DEAMS. Let's start off there. What is DEAMS, and where's the team at? How big is it? Just kind of that information. Sir, start with you.
Sure. So DEAMS stands for the Defense Enterprise Accounting and Management System. It's a BCAT-1 defense business system, and what we do is we manage the control and execution and reporting of the Air Force's general fund and US TRANSCOM working capital funds. Essentially, that just means money. And we support over 17,000 users across 170 different installations at all the Air Force MAGCOMs, Space Force, Unified Commands. That's where the Air Force is an agent there. We also support customers who utilize the Defense Finance and Accounting System, or DFAS. And essentially, our mission is to deliver accurate, reliable, auditable financial management information to enable efficient and effective decision-making by the Department of Defense. So you look at that, and that's essentially, basically, we enable the integration of all the Air Force financial information to produce accurate and timely financial statements in order to produce an accurate budget forecasting and to make effective decisions for our senior leaders and all levels across the Air Force. So what that is, but how do we do that? And that's really done by a team that's largely of about roughly 300, combination of 300 military, civilian, and contract members. And we're stationed, we're located mostly at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base and Gunner Annex in Alabama.
Okay, all right. So the team is about evenly split between those two locations, or?
It's predominantly here at Wright-Patt, and we do have a large operations contingency down in Gunner Annex.
Okay, all right. So let's get to the topic at hand. We know earlier this year the Air Force had announced that there was going to be a block of some sort on legacy Microsoft files. So I guess that would mean that some of the older files that we have wouldn't be able to be opened anymore. But can you help us explain to us what that really meant and what was driving that change?
So I'll start with that if that's right. Then I can hand it over to Tyler to expand upon it. He has a much deeper technical understanding as part of our operations IPT. And so, like everyone else, when we received essentially the emails that came out and said, effective the date, it's Microsoft, the legacy files, essentially if you look at your like anything Outlook or Excel or any of the Microsoft Office files, if it didn't end in that S, the new S designation, you would have difficulty opening, or you wouldn't be able to open them. Now, the Air Force did develop a script in order to be able to access that, similar to when you get a new CAT card, and then you come in and you just pull your certs, and now you can get your access to your previous emails. The Air Force did develop that. However, how DEAMS is structured in a lot of our different tables that our system utilizes in order to produce the reports, we're talking it goes back a decade, if not more, for some of this information that we have there. And so looking at that, we realized that this was going to have this could have a major impact and will have a major impact, especially if we have to essentially do it one at a time, as how the script was originally developed. And so we, essentially challenged the team to say, okay, what's going to be the implications of this? How can it affect our system? And what is there that we can do, anything that we could do about it? And so that's where Mr. Cronenberry and Mr. Bob Leach came in, and they really stepped up with a very innovative solution and really helped out not just DEAMS, but as it turned out, it was sent out to the Air Force, and they were able to do what was called batch, do the conversions as a batch. So with that, I'll just pause and I'll see if Tyler wants to add anything.
Yeah, so the impetus for this was really on the Air Force to follow up on a DISA-STIG. There are security concerns with the older office extensions that were really came about with Office 95. So that's a really long time ago, and Microsoft has been trying to phase these out for a while. And now it was incumbent upon the Air Force to make sure that users were relying on the new Office extensions. And so that's where we got involved to make sure that our user community in DEAMS was aware of this and that they were going to be able to function without the older extensions.
How many people would be affected by this, and what was the potential impact?
So the how many people could have been affected by this could have been anybody that was processing any sort of financial through DEAMS. So you look at that, that's our 17,000 users, but not just that, it is the entire Air Force community. So if there's an issue with DEAMS, like say with DTS. So DTS, well, DEAMS processes the DTS dollars. And so if there's, say, an issue with someone trying to file a voucher for DTS and it relied on a table that didn't have, that was now inaccessible, then potentially the voucher wouldn't have been able to be filed. So you look at that, and it could have had a very broad reaching and deep impact across the Air Force when it came to any of its financial execution and reporting. So essentially this would have, some of the impacts could have been exceptional latency, because you would have to go through and then identify which tables needed the scripts to be updated, or which the table needed to be in the new format, or it could have even broken some of the tables, which would have then caused inaccurate reports, or just even failure to even be able to process the financial data. So the impact had a potential to be severe. And it could have really affected all, everyone within the Air Force, DFAS, and TRANSCOM that utilizes DEAMS in order to process their funding.
Yeah, and when you're talking about problems with like TDY processing a voucher or your pay or something like, those are things that hit people right in the pocketbook. I mean, those are big problems. I mean, if you've got a problem there, that's a big challenge.
Roger. And even like case in point, last year, DEAMS processed over $70 billion or executed $70 billion through the system. So it's not just pay. It could have been even with trying to get things for, say, an aircraft, or out in, if out, say, at a deployed or forward deployed location, or any of those types of items, if it funneled through DEAMS and it had an issue with the tables, then it could have potentially impacted that, which could have caused a delay or even cancellation of some very critically needed items. So yeah, the exact impact is kind of hard to gauge, but at the same time, what do you do every day, or what do we do every day within the Air Force that requires money? And so you just think of it that way, and you're like, oh, this could have been severe.
Yeah, it could be. You're talking complete mission stoppage, potentially.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's talk about the solution. And so, how did you go about designing the solution? Now, you said that somebody else actually developed the script itself, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. There's an organization called the MCCC, and they came up with and developed a script that would change the file extensions en masse on a user's station. But prior to that, Bob Leach, myself, as well as Clifford Peterson, who is a counterpart who is in the FMO, the functional community, we are focused on the end user experience. So we were really we walked through the instructions that we had gotten from the MTO, made sure that those made sense for our users, and so that we could mitigate the impact on their daily functions. then we received this script from the MCCC. We walked through that as well and noticed that there were some issues with the script and how it functioned on a standard desktop. We had to figure out exactly where those problems were, and we were able to get the script working and send those instructions out to the user community with those caveats along with them. And then beyond that, was disseminated to a wider audience in the Air Force.
Mm-hmm. So when you rolled this out, what happened? I mean, did everything go as you expected it to go, or?
Yeah, we had good response from the users that we sent it to, and the functional community. We never heard any complaints with the script or with the instructions that they were given. So it really seemed to work for the users, enabled them to quickly change what they had been doing, and allow them to continue on with their work.
Now, I know from my own personal experience, I was working one day and this screen popped up and said that it was going to run this script, okay, and it started running, and I could see that it was renaming the files that it found like several thousand files on my computer, and it started going through and renaming them. It was basically all in the background. I mean, I continued doing other stuff the entire time that it was running, and so that's what this was, correct? Or
yeah, that's correct.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm glad that it renamed all those thousands of files, because I'm a pack rat for computer files and things. And I've got stuff that I've saved from, 10, 15 years ago. And I'd be lost if I wasn't able to access it.
Yeah, so. As most people are, we have files that we keep for years and years, and who knows when you might need to access that file again. So it's good that that conversion happened so that there wouldn't be any disruption.
Mm-hmm. So do you see this as a potential for a future issue? I mean, this ability to kind of like push a batch out across the entire Air Force and make changes to people's systems?
So I think this was largely a one-off type of solution that needed to be developed, but I think what is maybe what could be replicated is more the approach that the team took. And so you look at that, and a lot of credit to to Tyler, to Bob, to Cliff. They took it upon themselves with initiative, and what we like to do is we essentially give people, let them know, take the initiative, give them the empowerment in order to do these types of things, because you never know what type of innovative solutions or stuff like this comes up when you allow folks to just be empowered and feel like they can go and just take a look. And you look at that, and Tyler and company from their position said that we need to make sure that this has as minimal impact upon our end user as possible, and they really embodied that, and they went forward. And so you look at that, and so while this may be a one-off solution, the approach that they took is something that we really want to make sure that we keep replicating, because with that, we want to make sure that our end users are able to have the best experience possible when they're utilizing the system, that it works efficiently and effectively, and that it is accurate and reliable. Because there's if you're off on funding, then it's typically a bad day for everybody else. Especially when it comes to the end of the year and needing to be accurate down to the cents. We need to make sure that the system's operating in peak efficiency, and that's and as I said, all the credit to Tyler and Bob and Cliff, because they really embody that, and they want to make sure that our users are as satisfied as they can be.
Yeah. So it pretty much brings us to the end of our time. But I appreciate the fact that you guys came to help us tell this story today, because this is really, it's a huge problem that was averted. And if it had come to pass the way it could have, a lot of people would have been really seriously adversely impacted. But through your actions, they weren't. So before we move on, I just want to see if there's anything that you would like to add, or anything that I forgot to ask you about. We'll go with you first, sir.
So I guess I will say one shameless plug for IT systems in general. And that is You look at it and, like you're stating before, DEAMS runs a lot of the financials that the Air Force utilizes. And so when it's working great, everyone's happy. You don't hear a thing. However, when it stops or when there's an issue or a hiccup with the system, everyone is lined up to say, hey, you have an issue. So the way I like to look at it, or a correlation I like to make, is essentially like your electric company. You don't routinely call the electric company up to say, hey, you get outstanding job today. Power stayed on, everything worked out great. I'm really happy. But when that power goes out, there's 10,000 calls, and yep, we're aware. And so you look at that, and that's largely the IT system. And to compound it even more, essentially, a lot of these business systems, they're systems of one. So you look at it, and it's like having an aircraft fleet of one vehicle. And so you got to fix it while you fly it, and ensure that the user is still able to access and have the information that they have. So it really does pose a very unique challenge when you're trying to make updates or push something into production that's going to drive change into how the user operator has their experience there, and you want to make sure that that's mitigated and minimized, or ideally even transparent to them. So the whole vehicle of one and fixing it while you fly it is something that IT systems and defense business systems have been doing for a while, and it's just, like I said, a shameless plug, but something that I just wanted to make sure I really drove home, so that way people understand just how critical these systems are to everyone's daily operations. But thank you.
And Tyler, anything to add?
Just like to say that I work on a great team, on a great program with leadership, that our leadership team empowers us to solve these difficult problems that come up frequently. So we have a great team on DEAMS that is supporting the Air Force community.
Again, gentlemen, appreciate you coming to Leadership Log and explaining this problem for us, and appreciate your time.
Thank you. Appreciate the invite.